Hello, this is Georgina Rose, and welcome back to the Darling YouTube channel, a YouTube channel where we discuss magic, mysticism, the occult, and everything on the fringes of esoterica. I'm your host, Georgina Rose, a Thelemite and ceremonial magician, and I am also a part-time esoteric content creator and part-time surfer of the Enochian aethers. And welcome back. In this video, we're gonna be doing another Aleister Crowley text explained video. So I made the first video like this a couple months back. It was right around the holiday where we celebrate the reception of the Book of the Law, where I explained or attempted to give an introduction to Aleister Crowley's famous text, the Book of the Law. People really liked that video, and I thought it would be really good for me to explore more Thelemic text and give people introductions to more text. So I wanted to go with one that's less about the magic of thelema and more about the core ideas and philosophies, and that would be Liber Oz by Aleister Crowley. So this is really short. This is the entire text. I keep this up on my fridge. So I have this little unicursal hexagram magnet that I put this underneath. I talked about this on TikTok. So I actually look at this like every day. And I thought it would be really good to explain this because one, I can actually go through the whole text, because when I was trying to go through the Book of the Law, and I plan on filming one about vision and the voice, I can't really go through the text. I can kind of just give an introduction, but this one I can actually go through it. I'm going to be going through this with you like in great detail because this is something that people see a lot. A lot of people actually see this as their first Thelemic text because it's basically a pamphlet. At one point, I actually considered printing out like 200 of these and taping them up all around New York City where I live. But then I realized I think that's illegal because of vandalism. People print out things all the time and like hang them on poles here, but I'm not sure if it's like legal. So if anyone knows if that's legal, let me know and I'll actually do it. But this, very short, and it's basically an introduction to the ideas of thelema, because thelema, unlike a lot of other occult ideas, actually has a very strong philosophy to it. Beyond the esoteric practices and sort of the cosmologies and theologies that Aleister Crowley presented, there's a very distinct philosophic flavor to thelema, and I think this is like the perfect introduction in. Of course, there are big concepts like love and will, or thelema and agape. For those who don't know, and I feel like I should explain those because those two words pop up a lot in here. Thelema, within the context of thelema, is the Greek word for will, and it actually adds up numerologically to 93, which is why Thelemites sort of introduce themselves as like, 93, my name is Sora Georgina, right? And what that means is will is sort of like your highest purpose in life. So the reason why we do rituals and magic within thelema is to discover our will and follow it. That's like the whole goal. We believe that if you follow your will, you sort of enter a flow state where everything kind of falls into place and life tends to go well. Will is not something that's like a question you answer once. I think a lot of new Thelemites think, okay, I do the Thelemic rituals and I get the answer on what my will is. Rather, will is sort of a living, evolving state. I think it's really similar to kind of some Taoist understandings of the Tao. And then love, agape, the Greek word for love is agape, also adds up to 93. So that's where we get our little 93 in thelema, which is a very important number because those are our two big principles, right? Thelema, agape. Agape means love, but it doesn't mean like all types of love. When we look at Greek, there's a lot of different words for love, whereas in English, we just have one word. So when we refer to agape, we're talking about divine love. And the way that it's described in a lot of sort of text is that it's this flowing state between man's love for the divine and the divine love for man. So that like becomes this sort of continuum and thing. So it doesn't mean like being loving, being overly nice. Rather, it means having that love for divinity and love for the world. So that's a very important distinction. But yeah, let's break into the actual text. We're gonna go through this and I am gonna give some personal opinions. So if you cannot handle personal opinion or personal extrapolation, I am sorry. That is something you're gonna have to see today. Click on another video if you don't want to hear that. But I will be explaining like what all the text means. Obviously, like we all have our own right to interpret things. In thelema, there's this thing at the end of the Book of the Law called the comment, and the comment states that really every man should decide what thelema means for themselves. It's phrased a little differently, but it's basically Crowley's message. So I'm gonna give sort of a lens into this because I think there are certain lines that are confusing without context on thelema. So this makes sense to you, and then you can make your own extrapolations. You don't have to agree with me on everything. I don't think you should. I think it's important that we all develop our own independent opinions, thoughts, and ideas because thelema is deeply individualistic. You're not here to listen to the Thelemic Vatican tell you what to believe. You're here to make your own opinions and have your own personal gnosis because an important idea in Thelema is that you're supposed to have your own experiences with divine, your own experience with the spirits, with the HJ, and make your decisions up there. So this is to help you and give you guidance on what this could mean, but I'm not the gospel. Make up your own decisions. So let's break into it. So right at the top, it has some quotes from the Book of the Law. The Book of the Law, as I mentioned before, is kind of like the most important holy text. There are actually a couple texts that make up what we call the holy texts of Thelema. In Thelema, the texts are divided up into classes. So there's Class A, Class B, Class C, and so on. And any document that's labeled as Class A is considered a holy text of Thelema. But the most important does tend to be the Book of the Law, because that, when we receive that, we believe that's the beginning of the new aeon. So these are just some quotes from the Book of the Law. There's the law of the strong. This is our law and the joy in the world. AL 221. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. AL 140. I think we all know that one. Thou hast no right to do thy will, do that, and no other shall say nay. AL 142-3. And then there's every man and woman is a star. AL 1:3. So the law of the strong. This is our law and the joy of the world. Right? That's pretty straightforward. I don't really think I have to explain many of these. These are pretty basic. Do what thou wilt should be the whole of the law is like the ultimate axiom of Thelema. What that means is you should live for your will. Do what thou wilt should be the whole of the law does not mean do whatever you want whenever you want. We're using the Thelemic definition of will. So that means do what your true will tells you to do. And that's the whole of the law. All this stuff comes back to that idea. Then there's thou hast no right to do what thy will, do that, and no other shall say nay. That means live your true will no matter what anyone else says. Fuck the haters, live your willful life. Pretty straightforward. And then there's every man and every woman is a star. Basically, we are all important, we are all special, we should all treat each other equally. Cool. Then there is no God but man. And then that's right before we start getting into the actual document. So this line trips a lot of people up because they think, oh my God, Thelema is a bunch of atheists. This isn't true. Thelema, if you look into it, you see a lot of stuff like invocations, taking on god forms, Nuit, Hadid, Rahor Quid, Babylon. So how can there be no God but man? We call Babylon a goddess. We do celebrations based on the equinox of the gods. That's the name of a Thelemic holiday. What we mean about that, and how I like to take it, and this is my personal take, is that everything is divine. Unlike other religions, we believe that there's divinity in all of us. There's a spark of divine in every single person. As it says right there, every man and woman is a star. The stars are within us, divinity is within us. All the things are God. In the darkest places, there is God. In the lightest places, there is God. There is divinity everywhere. Everything is divine, so that's what that means. So God and man, they're both God. Everything's God. God is everywhere. God is not a single entity. God is everything. So that's how I take it. And now we're going to get into, there are four major points. I cut this poorly, so the 4 got cut off. Very good Thelema-ing. My will is actually to fuck up my pamphlet and cut off the important parts. That's what will is. Anyways, man has the right to live by his own law, to live in the way that he wills to do, to work as he will, to play as he will, to rest as he will, to die when and how he will. So basically, your will is how you should live your life. You can live your life in any lifestyle, whether that's a traditional lifestyle or an alternative lifestyle. We welcome that under Thelema. You can live however you want. You can dress like this if you want, or you can dress in a bikini. You can have a polyamorous relationship, or you can be monogamous. Thelema allows us to follow our own will. A lot of people interpret Thelema as counterculture. Because Crowley was so sort of against the Victorian norms and the Victorian puritanical standards, people are like, oh, Thelema means being the complete opposite of that. But that's actually wrong. Thelema means living how your will demands. And so a lot of Thelemites really went against that because a lot of people's will is not what society told them to believe. A lot of people felt really uncomfortable with the Victorian lifestyle, so they went the hard other direction. And if that's who you are, that's great, but you can be anywhere on that continuum and be a Thelemite, okay? Because Thelema is about living your will unapologetically and no matter what that looks like. So let's get into the next point. Man has the right to eat what he will, to drink what he will, to dwell where he will, to move as he will on the face of the earth. So you can live where you want and you can eat what you want. I know a lot of religions have, like food rules. Like Judaism has kosher law, Hinduism has certain restrictions. Some Wiccans opt to be vegan because they feel that's better in line with what they call the rule of three. Thelema has no dietary restrictions. While there are Thelemites who take on certain yogic diets or do fast before certain rituals, like a lot of Thelemites talk about things like the Abramelin ritual, which just has dietary requirements. You can eat whatever you want. I personally like exploring diet in a context of ritual. I think like taking inspiration from diets from different religions for specific rituals you're doing can be really helpful, but you can eat however you want. You can be a vegan, you cannot be a vegan. We allow drinking. We're not very restrictive. The next one is my favorite point. Man has the right to think what he will, to speak what he will, to write what he will, to draw, paint, carve, etch, mold, build as he will, to dress how he will. So what that means is you're allowed to think what you want. Thelema is not a rigid religion. There is not one interpretation of Thelema. As we refer back to the comment, Crowley talks about how each man interprets Thelema in their own way. And that's why you see so many diverse ideas about Thelema. You see the Thelemites who are very strict OTO members, you see Typhonian Thelemites, you see other new religious movements breaking off of Thelema. Thelema's open-ended. While you do have to believe in these things to be a Thelemite, beyond that it's up to you. You can have different political beliefs, you could be into different philosophical beliefs, you can blend Thelema with other traditions. We're open-minded. It's very against Thelema to be dogmatic, to think in such a dogmatic way where anyone who disagrees with you should be cast out. That's not very Thelemic. While you should hold to these principles of liberty and will, you can think as you want, you can believe how you want, and you are able to question Thelema. Thelema does not shun apostates. Thelema does not shut down questioning. You're allowed to question Thelema. If an attitude or concept in Thelema makes you uncomfortable, you're allowed to think about that. You're allowed to critique the prophet. I mean, almost every religion gets mad when you critique their founder, right? Like, you can't critique Muhammad, you can't critique Jesus, but you want to know what Thelemites are welcome to critique? Aleister Crowley, because he was a man. He was not a god, he was a human being. So we question him. There are even whole like sections of the Thelemic community that don't even really agree with him on that much. You're allowed to question things, and if there are problems in the community, such as you having a bad experience, and I'm allowed to question that, you know, I'm allowed to go, hey, I disagree with that, let's talk about it, because Thelema thrives on discussion, us coming together and talking to each other, us listening to each other, and us having dialogue. And that's why we are all allowed to read the book of the law ourselves, not have someone tell it to us, and make our own extrapolation. Like if you listen to me now and you disagree with my interpretation, good. That's a good thing. You should always be questioning what you believe and having critical thought and allowing people to express themselves, express their free speech. As well, when it comes to art, I think Thelema recommends us pay attention to challenging artworks, to separate the artist from the art, and to really think about things from a deeper level. I think we should expose ourselves to ideas we disagree with. We should listen to the Thelemites who we disagree with the most. We can learn so much from other perspectives, and I think that's really what's shining through this section of LIBER OZ. And if you're ever uncomfortable with an idea of Thelema, express yourself, give that criticism, give that thought, and we can all discuss it and agree with that, because Thelema is about individual thought and individual personal gnosis. There's a concept called unverified personal gnosis, which is basically everyone has their own experiences with the divine, and that's like your personal thing. Like let's say you're doing a Jupiter ritual and you realize that Jupiter really likes bay leaves. That would be something that's your UPG. You are welcome to have UPG within Thelema. When you converse with your HGA and when you converse with the divine, those conversations are for you. And if something comes out of that that actually contradicts your worldview, follow that. If you end up being followed by an idea out of Thelema later on, that's valid. You can have your own experience, and that's what Thelema recommends. Man has the right to love as he will. Then there's a quote from Book of the Law. Take your fill and will of love as you will, when, where, and with whom you will. AL 151. So what this means is that you can love who you want. You can be polyamorous, you can be monogamous, you can have a traditional marriage where you're a literal trad wife, or you can be polyamorous and have your polyamorous commune. You can do what you want. You can be gay, you can be straight, you can have any love expression, and that's okay because we all experience person-to-person love differently. Love who you want, how you want, when and where. Maybe not like public indecency, maybe don't do that. So the next line is the most controversial thing in this entire document. There have been full lectures and podcasts on what this line means because it feels like a very big tone shift and it's a little jarring. And that would be, man has the right to kill those who thwart these rights. And then there's a quote from Book of the Law with, the slave shall serve. Oh boy, let's talk about this. So, the real question, is this an endorsement of murder? Is this Crowley saying, yeah, pick up your gun and just like run into a Walmart? No, this is not like go murder people. That's not it, so let's get that out of the way. One printing of Liber Oz I found once actually cited the Second Amendment of the US Constitution under this, which I found really interesting because that amendment typically refers to being able to defend yourself from tyranny. Like if the government infringes on your rights, you have the right to like form a militia and like overthrow them. Which I find very interesting. I've also seen this compared to stand your ground laws. Sort of like this is a spiritual stand your ground. If someone comes and prevents you from living your will, prevents you from loving who you want to love, prevents you from dressing how you want, prevents you from eating how you want, you have a right to sort of defend yourself, to stand your ground. That's about how I see it. I think what this means is anyone who sort of blocks you from living this way, whether it's, you know, a boss or a oppressive government or something, you have the right to defend yourself. Do I think that means kill them? Not necessarily. I think the like self-defense thing only really applies if you're in like a life or death emergency. Like let's say some horrible tyrannical government has taken over and they're like taking away your rights, then I do think you have the right to defend yourself. I think Thelema would support that. But I think in general that means you have the right to stand up for anyone who infringes on your will. And what that also implies is that your will sort of ends when other people's will begins. So let's say your will is to be with another person. If that person doesn't want to be with you, you're violating their will. So your will sort of ends there because they have all these rights too. Is that something you want? Sure, but can you do that because it violates their will? No, because then they have the right to stand up to you, to say, no, you're violating my will, you're no longer being a good Thelemite, you're not a Thelemite anymore, because your will ends where other people's will begins. And if someone infringes upon your will, you have the right to stand your ground and defend yourself. That's what I think this means. So now let's get into the Book of the Law quote that's right below this. The slave shall serve. So, is this an endorsement of slavery? Is Aleister Crowley making a TikTok hot take of slavery based, actually? So when Aleister Crowley discussed slaves, because it's an image that comes up a few times, so you have a slave. What I think this means is a slave to the old aeon. So in Thelema, there's this concept called aeons, where there have been 2 aeons in the past, the aeon of like the pagan mommy goddess, the aeon of like pure Christianity, hail Jesus, whatever, and then the Aeon of Horus, which is what the Book of the Law begins, which is the current Aeon of individual thought, individual spirituality, gnosis, all that. So I think what that means is you can choose to be caught in the old Aeon, the trappings of the past, or you can choose to live within the new Aeon. So when I think he means slave, I think it means someone who's choosing to not follow their will and choosing to live in a way that goes against their will, essentially making themselves a slave. I don't think this means slavery literally, but that is my own personal interpretation. I think it's really hard to twist this as meaning slavery literally. I think that's pretty clear that he didn't mean that, but you could also interpret this as like a reference to Nietzsche's master-slave morality. There are a couple other ways to take that. My personal way is that it's being a slave to the old Aeon and not living your own will, so in an essence, you've enslaved yourself. And the people who follow their will are the strong, the ones who sort of are right to lead society because they're living in the proper way. And then the last is love is the law, love under will, which basically means love is the law and will is the most important thing. That love under will thing sometimes trips people up because they're like, why is love secondary to will? Does that mean Thelema hates joy and hates love? No, what that means is that without your understanding of your will, how can you love? How can you love the divine if you don't know what your relationship with the divine should be? If you can't discover your will and how you're meant to live, how can you fully express love? So that's how I take it. So hopefully this gave you some insight to Liber Oz. Liber Oz is all over the internet. I will link a full copy below. You can pass this out, print this around. Hopefully this gave you a little bit of insight. If you guys want me to interpret any more Crowley text, I'm very open to. I hope this gave you some insight into Thelemic philosophy. I'm preparing some other videos on like Thelemic ideas of philosophy, exploring ideas such as hedonism, Nietzsche's overlap with Thelema. I've been thinking a lot about the Thelemic philosophy, will, all that stuff. So if you guys want videos on that, let me know. You can support this by joining my Patreon where you get extra videos. You get all the videos about a week early, sometimes even more than a week. I've been getting them out almost 2 weeks early recently. As well, you get extra videos once a month. You get ritual guides, and if you're a high enough patron, you can get meetings with me once a month and pick my brain. I also host Magnolias and Magic, which is an esoteric commentary podcast that releases once a week. I only post here once every other week, but I post the podcast once a week. We talk about all sorts of hot topics, and it's co-hosted with another YouTuber and another podcaster. I also am on Instagram, TikTok. I post Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter almost daily. I'm also on Telegram. I'm on like almost every platform, and I stream on Twitch Monday and Tuesday nights. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a lovely night. And like, comment, subscribe, and if you're subscribed for 93 days, you will meet your holy guardian angel. Please don't call the Better Business Bureau on me. I've already got that vandalism case going up against me. So have a good night. Bye.